I would start with the prescription drugs. Obviously doctors too, network is very important, but prescriptions are very important because we're seeing, deductibles either where there wasn't a deductible before, or maybe, it only applied to tiers 4 and 5. Now it applies to all tiers or more tiers than before. And so there's going to be some shock when these members go to pick up their prescriptions in January if they're not used to paying a deductible and now they've got to. So you want to try and get out in front of that if possible.
At the end of this, I like to be very proactive in the way, and I want to set aside a little 2-minute time for me to make a speech on how to ask for referrals. And one of the things that I'm going to say at the end of it is like, look, I'm committed to helping you. And like I told you earlier, I want to be the first person that you call if you ever have any questions. But would you do me a favor? I know that you probably have a lot of friends, right? People that you know with Medicare. Would you do me a favor? And if you know someone else with Medicare, would you do me a favor and have them give me a call? I would love. Hey everybody, welcome back to Medicare Agent IQ. I'm Raul Gonzalez.
And I'm Oscar Ibieta.
And today we are going to talk about making this your best AEP yet. And we may have already had that title not too long ago.
Recently, just a few months ago.
Yeah.
But it was a little different. I think we covered some different things, and it was more of a preparation for AEP.
And on that one, we were talking about, hey, look, there's going to be a lot of changes to expect with the changes to Part D, and it's going to change the MAPDs, and you're going to see that the benefits aren't as good as they were. And to a point, that was very true. And some things have changed, and it wasn't as bad as a lot of people who work in this industry expected. But plans are not as good as they were, but not as bad as they could have been.
Yeah, I feel like overall, and I say this all the time to agents, I feel like year over year, the plans seem to have gotten better and better year over year. And now we're in a year where we're not necessarily, I don't know that they're necessarily getting worse or going backwards in a way.
Well, here's what I know. I just want to so when I started in the industry, I'm like this gray haired man now, but when I started in the industry back in 2007, the copay to spend the night in the hospital in the San Antonio Humana Gold Plus was $60 per stay.
Wow.
And then after the Affordable Care Act, we saw that the plan started to not look as good. And then they've gotten better and better.
They've improved.
Since
And that's about the time that I came into the business, because I remember seeing like PPO plans. And there are a lot that still have premiums, but it kind of, every PPO plan had a premium. When I started in the business, there was no such thing as a zero premium PPO. And now, today, people are sometimes a little bit shocked at the fact that there is a premium on their PPO. I guess it also depends on the market that you're in. But again, overall, we were just expecting a lot worse to be coming for 2025, and it turns out it's not as bad as we thought.
Maybe next year.
Also just depends on the market that you're working, because you may focus on a market that is really going to be facing this crazy storm. But overall, when we look at the landscape of what things are looking like for 2025, not as bad as we anticipated.
Yeah, like you'll notice that some of the carriers decided, hey, we're gonna still invest in this market, and they're still investing in like the San Antonio market. We didn't face nearly what it could have been, but there are some markets where you're absolutely right. They things did get worse, and so let's talk about that. So kind of one of the first steps that we want to talk about is to study your market thoroughly. So we understand that there's agents that will cover 5 or 6 states, or some that cover all 50 states, right? And obviously, there's no way to really study the benefits in those areas, or for the whole country. I mean, to know this stuff off the top of your head, you'd have to be a genius, right? Like, but for those like us, like that, we'll focus on a market. You're going to want to keep notes. There's Humana, and everybody held on to it until the last minute, but Humana is exiting. There's Aetna is exiting. We were seeing plan exits, and so because of that, you've got to study those and then have a good option if you do run into someone who's losing their plan to be able to say, hey, look, this is going to probably fit your needs, and to kind of know that stuff off the top of your head.
Yeah, you got to be able to position yourself. You got to know how to have conversations with people. If you're a field agent, whether you're out there running in-person appointments or if you're doing telesales, it's still important to understand all the changes that are coming to any market that you focus on. So like, for example, again, we're based in Texas. There's a market in South Texas where Humana is exiting with a strong plan that they've got there, but United Healthcare is expanding with a couple new products into that market. So we have agents that are kind of building or have been working on some strategies around what's happening in that market. So, but overall, you got to be able to, it just makes you that much more valuable when you're talking to somebody. If you're able to just have a conversation about some of the good or the bad that's coming to their plan off the top of your head, simply because you took the time to study what the benefits are looking like, it just makes you look that much more valuable to them. But again, allows you to position yourself in a way, or you can just, as they're talking and giving you information, and you're going through that needs analysis, they're going to tell you things that they like or dislike about their plan. And as they're giving you that information and you're uncovering that information, you now, because you've done some homework and you've done some studying, you know what you're going to pull, out of your bag to show them as a new option for them.
Yeah. One of the thoughts that I have when it comes to knowing the market is, if I want to be prepared regardless of what plan someone has. Like, it could be the best plan, and if you're just listening and not watching, I'm doing air quotes. Obviously we know that we're not going to refer to anything as the best plan, but you could be on what would be perceived as the best plan in the market, and I should know where that plan struggles and what other plan doesn't struggle with that same benefit, and I should be able to kind of bring it up and just mention it to the person. And if that's something that's important to them, maybe they're a person that's going to want to move. So
yeah, just because it's the quote unquote best plan in overall, maybe it's got the largest amount of membership or whatnot, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best plan for that individual. There could be something else that makes more sense to for that person, simply based on what's important to them and what their needs are. I think this year, as we move into 2025 and you're preparing, what can I do to just make myself that much more valuable moving into AEP? I'd say a lot of things I would start with the prescription drugs. Obviously doctors too, network is very important, but prescriptions are very important because we're seeing deductibles either where there wasn't a deductible before, or maybe it only applied to tiers 4 and 5. Now it applies to all tiers or more tiers than before, and so there's going to be some shock when these members go to pick up their prescriptions in January if they're not used to paying a deductible and now they've got to. So you want to try and get out in front of that if possible. And so obviously you want to have that conversation with your members, but any prospects, you want to say, hey, look, educate them about the changes that are coming to Part D, and say it's important that we just do a plan review and we review your drug costs and see what they're looking like on your plan for next year, and see if there's anything else out there where you could possibly save some money on your prescriptions.
Yeah, one of the other things that I like to do is, and kind of what I would recommend, is that if you have clients that you're going to have to meet with anyway, and you're going to have to do a review for, because we're going to have to get in front of these things. One of the things that I think would be a really smart move is to mention to them, hey, there's a lot of people who are going through this now. If you want, why don't you, and you don't even have to tell me who's coming, but bring some friends that might have that same plan. And I can kind of do a review for everyone and just kind of help whoever you invite. So don't hesitate to invite some friends with you for this review. And to be honest, I've had that where, gosh, I remember there's this client that I had. She's a sweet lady, and we all met at 6 p.m. one day, and this was probably 13 years ago. We all met at 6 p.m. and they were drinking wine and wanted to talk benefits, and so we're going through all the benefits. It was because I had a meeting with one person, and she decided to invite her boyfriend and then 2 other couples that they hang with. So it was 6 people, and I'm going through and I'm talking benefits. Ended up getting 6 new enrollments that day, just because we were all there and they brought their friends, and I recommend that she brings friends. She was kind of the leader of this group. Does it always work that way? No. Maybe they bring one person, maybe they don't bring anyone, but at least throw it out there. Hey, I'm happy to help. Yeah, exactly. I'm happy to help any of your friends. Why don't you have any of your friends that are on the same plan? Some people, depends on the people. Like Oscar, super social. He probably would shop for insurance with your friends. I'm not. I probably wouldn't. That's kind of more of a private thing. But everybody is different, and so throw it out there to everyone. That's kind of one of those like key notes that's something that you should do every time. And just and to be real honest, we're talking about having your best AEP yet. That's something that, anytime you go into somebody's house, you could just be like, hey, by the way, when you sit down, is there anyone else in the household that's on Medicare that might benefit from us all talking about these plans right now? And you'll never, it never fails. Like, well, sometimes it does, but like you'll be surprised to see that maybe their disabled son, who is 40 years old, is on original Medicare, and maybe you could talk to them about a DSNP or whatever the situation is. You've got to always, and I think that's one of the best ways to kind of have your best AEP yet, is to make sure that you ask, who else can I help with Medicare? Anyone else in the household? And when you're on the phone and setting up an appointment, do me a favor, invite any other friends that have Medicare. Doing those 2 things, you might see 10, 15 extra enrollments this year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you can add an extra sale or 2 here and there, that's going to add to your overall total.
Is it going to double your sales production? No, but maybe it adds 10 or 15 sales, and that's 10 or 15 sales that you weren't going to have.
Yeah, and if you're a busier agent, you've got a full AEP, you know that maybe you're stressing out about how you're going to manage, because it's a short period. We all know 7.5 weeks that we have to enroll people. So try and get out in front of it and ask, hey, we're scheduled to meet on this day. If there are any friends or family members that you'd love to invite to this appointment, please have them tag along. So I love that you threw that idea out there, as opposed to running that appointment and then asking, hey, asking for referrals after the appointment. Now, still do it. You still want to make sure to ask for the referrals, but also try and maybe get some referrals to show up to that appointment in the first, when you initially schedule that appointment. And again, that's going to add to your overall production. But yeah, I've done it several times. You taught me that when I first got into the business. Hey, before you run that appointment, see if they have any friends or family members that would love to tag along. And so I'm going to one up you here. I actually walked into a home where I walked away with 7 sales.
Oh man! I had 8 one time. No, but it happens, right? Because you make that. So let's talk real quick. And again, we're talking about making this your best AEP yet. It's the approach in how you ask for referrals. And so, on this next part, I would say that I like to be at the end of this. I like to be very proactive in the way, and I want to set aside a little 2-minute time for me to make a speech on how to ask for referrals. And one of the things that I'm going to say at the end of it is like, look, I'm committed to helping you. And like I told you earlier, I want to be the first person that you call if you ever have any questions. But would you do me a favor? I know that you probably have a lot of friends, right? People that you know with Medicare. Would you do me a favor? And if you know someone else with Medicare, would you do me a favor and have them give me a call? I would love to be able to be that source of information. The way that I understand it is that there's a lot of people out there who struggle to find a good insurance agent, someone that will call them back. And I'm telling you right now, you've got my cell phone number and a commitment that I'm always going to be there if you ever have any questions. So I'm sure if you know somebody else, would you do me a favor and have them give me a call? A lot of times the answer is, oh yeah, of course. And it starts to get them to think about who else that they might know. And that's a question also that I ask is I'll say, hey, look, do me a favor. Would you think about who else that you might know that has Medicare that I might be able to help? I don't need their name, but I just want you to think about that. And so it's a lot different than saying, do you know anyone else with Medicare that I might be able to help? Because you're naturally, no.
Yeah. Or here's my card. Give it out. Hand it out.
But if you're doing things that are outside of that, and so sometimes I've talked to agents who are like, man, I feel uncomfortable having a conversation like that. I feel uncomfortable saying it like that. did I sound like a cheesy salesman? Do I sound like a used car salesman?
Not at all.
I don't think so. All I'm doing is saying, hey, look, whoever else that you might know, do me a favor. I would love to help them also. Would you have them give me a call? And usually it's a pretty smooth conversation from there. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I'll do that. And that phone does ring because of it. Oh, yeah. So we're talking about, again, is it going to double your sales? No, but it's going to add 10 or 15 more throughout an AEP, throughout a full selling season, right? So if I did that, I did the asking to bring people. So now I'm at 20, 30 extra sales instead of where I was before had I not done these things.
Yeah, because now you have to make sure that you deliver, right? If you're making this commitment, you're making this promise to return calls, to answer calls, you have to make sure that you deliver on that. But quick example, quick story, I have a client who, she's great because she's loyal, but she also refers a lot of people to me. She called me about a week ago and the week just got away from me. And I was not able to call her back. And I finally called her back today, or the following Monday, right? I was able to get back with her. And the first thing she says was, I've been so worried about you. You usually always answer or return my call. Are you okay? Like, she was genuinely worried about me. And she's like, then she ended all that with, I've got 3 friends that are ready to meet with you. We just need to set up an appointment. I want you to come over and do a plan review with me. And then I would love for you to meet with my friends as well. So I was like, gosh. So again, it was just because I've always delivered. I've always come through for her and returned her phone calls. She's loyal and now she refers a lot of business to me, but you got to make sure you deliver.
Yeah. Here's the flip side to that. I remember you telling a story once about how it was your friend's parent, which makes it even worse. You didn't call back because it was a Friday afternoon or something, and you ended up calling back on a Monday, and he went somewhere else, right?
Decided to go somewhere else. So you've got to make sure
you call people back. Like, dude, guys, like, it's not that hard to make a quick call on a Friday and say, hey, look, I want to be your agent. Definitely want to talk, but I do want to let you know I'm already out of the office. Would it be okay if I call you back on Monday? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is, hey, to be real honest, this is the only day I have. I really wanted to get something done. Be like, okay, you know what? I'm wrapped up. Can I call you back at 7 p.m.? Or what if I called you first thing tomorrow morning on Saturday morning? And it's just a matter of they need to get this off of their mind. They're like, sometimes they're super stressed about it, and they're like, oh, okay, I got to check this box off before I can start enjoying my weekend. Yeah. Right. And so
I think that's the case a lot of the times. I don't think it's sometimes that they're stressed about it, because if they're, again, this is their day to day, this is their livelihood, these are their healthcare decisions that they're having to make. And they've got all this pressure of, AEP, and they're getting the mail and they're seeing the commercials. And so it's a priority for them. So you have to make sure that you make them a priority for yourself as well.
Yeah. And I think for myself, I tend to, as an agent, I remember that there's been multiple times where I'm like, man, why is it that this person keeps calling me? I said on my voicemail, it says I'll call you back within 24 hours, or it might say at the end of the day. I don't know what it says. Right. I usually call back pretty quick, but I was like, why is it like, you don't have to keep calling, and I'll notice, like, they'll make the call. And if I hadn't called them back in 2 hours, sometimes you're getting that second phone call. And I remember thinking, just kind of like as an agent, I'm like, man, guys, calm down. I'll call you back. But then there's been times when I'm the consumer and I call someone, I'm like, all right, well, I'm waiting for you to call back. How come you haven't called back? So, like, kind of put yourself in the consumer's shoes. Sometimes you just need to get it off of your plate. So if you make that phone call real quick, and people are pretty understanding, like, unless you run into that random jerk, which, to be honest, like, I don't even want that as a client. So like, if I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrapped up in something. Oh, okay, I'll call someone else. All right, thanks so much. Yeah. Like, I'm okay with that, because you know what that tells me is, like, down the road, they're going to be difficult, right? Yeah. Like, so I'm like, okay. But most people are super understanding if you just call them back and say, hey, I'm wrapped up right now. I'm already with my family for the weekend. I'll reach out on Monday if that's okay. And sometimes they'll just say, well, to be real honest, I needed to get it done this weekend. Yeah. Okay. But making that call, you just saved yourself 3-4 sales or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's so important. You're going to feel bombarded. You're going to feel overwhelmed. It's AEP. We've been there. We know what it's like to be an agent out in the field and trying to manage, everything that you've got going on during AEP. Then you're on the road or you're on calls, and it's just hard for you. It feels like you're just trying to play catch up the whole time, a lot of times, which is, it's a good problem to have. But you've got to make sure that you return those calls in a timely manner. If you're back to back all day, maybe squeeze out 5 minutes just to touch base. Like you said, hey, I'm tied up all day. I've got appointments all day long. I didn't want to go the rest of the day without connecting with you. And that's all they want many times, is just they want you to connect with them. So that way you can put something on the calendar or let them know, hey, I'm going to call you back at this time or tomorrow morning. But make that connection, because if you don't, what's going to happen is if Raul didn't call me back, and it was just 7 hours,
Right.
It was just a 5-hour gap, but
and sometimes
it's at the top of their mind.
You get lucky, like you did, right? Like that client, she's already got, you have good rapport, everything, but you also get the flip side of it, which is you didn't call me back. Sorry, see you later. I know you're my son's friend, but sorry, too bad. You should have called me earlier. Yep. So hey, let's talk about kind of just another strategy here, and I think that it is being strategic with your appointments. And so, man, when I first started in the business, I'd be running around. And so we're talking to agents who meet in person, right? But I'd be running around, and I'd go from one city that is far northwest of San Antonio in a different county. And then I'd have far southeast of in a different county out there. And I didn't do a good job because I wanted to just get every appointment as soon as I could. And then kind of just decided I'm going to start to get appointments. If I can get them in the same zip code, if I can get them in that same, side of town, and making sure that I don't put myself to where I'm traveling too much. Because if anything, it kind of can burn you out, right? You're I got the sales, but gosh, I spent
worked really
14
hard,
hours driving instead of, or 14 hours of a day instead of 8. Because I decided to drive too much in that one day. So I would say that you got to kind of map out where you want to go and get your appointments close to each other. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, maybe, for San Antonio, right, which is where we're at, maybe, divide it into 4 quadrants and say, I'm going to try and set up appointments in this part of town for this, these 2 days of the week. And then the next day I'll be on this part of town. And so that way, when you're calling and talking to people, you could say, hey, look, I'm going to be in your area on Thursday. Does that work for you? Or I'm actually going to be out there, at the end of the week or early next week. Let's put something on the calendar. So that way you've got, you set up 4, 5, 6 appointments, and they're all in the same area, and you can just be a lot more efficient with your time. And you also don't want to, I feel like when we're not in AEP, I usually set aside a couple of hours for an appointment. If I'm going to meet with somebody at 9:30, I'm going to go for an hour and a half, but I'll block out 2 hours just because there's always the chance that it can go a little bit longer. But during AEP, you really don't have, if you're a busy agent, and you've got a long to-do list, or you got a long list of people that you need to meet with, I don't think maybe 2 hours may not do the trick, because you still gotta, you have to account for travel time, from to the appointment and then to your next appointment. So you just want to I would encourage you to maybe try and shorten up the appointment just a bit, so that way you can move on to the next one. You have different thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, so my thought is that you have a responsibility to the client of making sure to explain things in a way that they'll understand. So a lot of times when I'm setting up my day and when I'm talking to people and setting up an appointment, what I do is I let them know, hey, look, so we're scheduling an appointment for 10 o'clock, but I want to be real, or I'm sorry, let's say we're scheduling an appointment for 2 o'clock. 10 o'clock, that's easy. 9 o'clock in the morning, that's easy, because those are my first appointments. Okay. And what I'll tell them is, look, I'm scheduling an appointment with you for 2 o'clock. I do let you know that depending on who I'm seeing before I meet you, sometimes I'll run into someone who's super talkative or has a lot of questions. And so I want to let you know that, it could be that, maybe I'm 20 minutes late. Is this a good day if you have to wait an extra 20 minutes? No, that's not a problem. And here's what I'll do. If it's going to be any longer than that, if it looks like I'm not going to be here till 3 for some crazy reason, and it would have to be a crazy reason, but if that, then I would give you a call. Would that work for you? And a lot of times when you're setting up the appointment, people are cool when you set expectations.
Yeah.
And what I find is that when you don't set those expectations, people get grumpy. Like, this guy said he was going to be here at 2 and he's not here. Yeah. And like, if you ever called someone at like 2:15, they're like, oh, well, I'm just sitting here waiting for you. Like, well, yeah, like I'm not, like I still have to drive there. So, I like to set it, because usually when you set those expectations ahead of time, people are really cool with you being late. They're like, oh, I'm just here anyway. But sometimes people feel disrespected in their time. And even though they're just sitting around anyway, just like watching Jeopardy, they're grumpy with you. So set expectations and do your best. Yeah. I mean, personally, I still schedule them every 2 hours apart, because what if you schedule that appointment at 10 and you're done, and then you've got an appointment at noon? Are they going to kill you if you show up 30 minutes early? Probably not. You can make that call and be like, hey, I wrapped up early. I'm in the area. Would you mind if I just drop in so I can get myself a little lunchtime afterwards?
Right.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm just sitting here. So a lot of times you're able to do that. And if you are strategic about the way that you schedule those appointments, if you do a great job of that, then you're probably to where you could jump in front and go meet with someone else if they say no, and then be 20-30 minutes late, and then you took care of the other person in front. Yeah.
Or sometimes there's just, you've got, if you have that gap, you make that call. Hey, I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. Right. Is it okay if I show up at 11:30 instead of 12 o'clock? Show up half an hour early and say, I'm actually not home yet. I won't be home until 12. Let's leave it for 12 o'clock. Not a problem. Okay, let me return calls. Who do I need to call? What do I need to be doing? So you could also use that time to catch up, or just to stay on top of things. Make sure you're staying on schedule.
Scan the area and find out if there's a doctor that is, just go and see if you can go and create new relationships. Drop in at some brokers' offices. I always tell people, like, don't ever be busy just to be busy, right? And of course, there's something you could do. Maybe go wash your car. Like, I haven't wanted to wash my car. Or you could do something that's more productive and go out and see if there's an Allstate agent that would love someone who doesn't sell auto and home or life insurance to their clients. And you go and see if you can create relationships. Be very, very, like, this is one thing that I would tell people, is that during AEP, you should always be like this, but during AEP, we should be like, okay, we're in war mode or whatever, like I'm going to go out there and I'm going to have the best AEP ever. Well, go and spend that time creating a new relationship with somebody who works with, somebody who actually works, that you could refer you business. So whatever that looks like, that could be a doctor's office, dentist office, different insurance
with types. All the changes to Part D, maybe a local pharmacy that you could drop in and just try and create a relationship. Absolutely.
So use that time is kind of what we're saying. Yep. So let's go on real quick to the next, and kind of the last thing that we would love to talk about is the power of follow-up. And so, gosh, I will tell you that sometimes it's one of the biggest frustrations in my role today, when I spend a lot of money to kind of generate phone calls into our office, and I figured out ways to get phone calls. And a lot of times we'll assign them to agents, and I'll assign an agent. I'll assign a lead to an agent, and they will pick up the phone and call, and I appreciate that. And then nobody answers the call, and 3 weeks later I call them back, and I'm like, hey, whatever happened with that lead? And they're like, yeah, they didn't answer. I'm like, well, how many times did you call them back? Yeah. So you've got to figure out a way to be very strategic in your follow up and your follow through. And so one thing, so it depends on how good you are and how, like, the easiest thing to do if you're not a person that's super electronic and don't have a good CRM is to just keep a notebook of people that you need to follow up with. And so if you ever get a lead, write it in the notebook under, to follow up, write it in the notebook along with the time that you called and what the action was, left voicemail, and then where you got the lead. Write that in the notebook and keep it in your car. And just when you do have those downtime and you're not dropping in on offices, you open up that book and I'm like, oh, there's a lead that I forgot to call. So you go ahead and pick it up and continue to follow up and continue to make those phone calls, and you're going to be a lot more successful. There's a lot of I wish. See, this is being unprepared. There's the old the Zig Ziglar quote that like that 80% of agents only call once, and the top 10% of agents call 9 times, and they're the ones who make up 90% of the sales. And so I just made all those numbers up on the spot, by the way.
Those statistics
which most statistics are usually made up on the spot. So mine were as well, but kind of it gets the point across that sales agents typically only call once. And so the average agent, they do well, but those top agents, the ones that all of us see out there that are top producers, always on the top producer list, always doing well, the reason that they're doing so well is because they're not shy about making multiple calls. And you got to figure out, one, to how to not be embarrassed to make that call, but 2, how to remember to call those people. And if you can get organized in that way, it's going to be a very successful AEP.
Yeah, because it doesn't always look like, okay, I'm sitting at my desk, I've got my journal out, and I'm ready to make these calls. Sometimes it's just in between appointments. All right, let me see, who do I need to follow up with? I'm going to call. I've got 15 minutes to spare between now and my next appointment. Let me try and hammer out these phone calls. It doesn't always look the way that you might imagine or the way that it might look in a movie.
Right.
You have to carve out the time. You have to find the time. You have to make the time to make these phone calls, especially when it's not, somebody that is either, maybe it's, if it's somebody in your book of business that, and maybe you need to make a plan change with them. Yeah. I wouldn't say they don't have to be so high on the priority list, because they are a priority, but we're talking if you're out at an event, or maybe you work some retail and you generate a lead from there, it is super important that you call them, because if you're not calling them, believe me, somebody else is calling them.
I'm happy to do it, right? Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you make them a priority.
Awesome, man. So until next time, guys, make this your very best AEP. There's so much opportunity this AEP. There's so much. And you hate to be a person that looks back and says, gosh, this was the year to really grow my book by 150, 200 clients, and I didn't go all in. So go all in on this AEP. So until next time, thanks so much for listening and for watching. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, and there's something else, Facebook.
Facebook.
All right, guys, have a great AEP.